Everything. Walking into a room and instantly capturing attention, not because you're the loudest, but because every word you speak carries weight, clarity, and confidence. Everything. Imagine building relationships that don't just survive but thrive, simply because you know how to listen, connect, and respond with impact. Everything. Effective communication is not a skill reserved for the gifted few. It is an art anyone can master. And once you do, doors to stronger relationships, greater influence, everything, and lasting success begin to open. This audiobook will be your guide, showing you not just how to talk, but how to truly connect. There is a silent language that speaks louder than words, everything. A presence that enters the room before your voice does, and a power that people feel from you long before you ever explain who you are. Everything. Think about the last time someone walked into a room and instantly shifted the energy. Maybe it was a leader, a colleague, or even a stranger. You couldn't quite explain it, everything. But something about them demanded attention. Their posture, their energy, their quiet confidence. Without saying a single word, everything. They had already communicated more than many people do in a 20-minute conversation. That is the power of presence. Too often we think of communication as starting with speech, everything. But the truth is it begins long before. It begins with how you carry yourself, the way your eyes meet others, the calm or chaos in your energy, the way you occupy space, everything. People are reading you before you even open your mouth. And in those first few seconds, impressions are being formed that can shape every interaction that follows. Everything. Imagine if you could master that silent language so that without uttering a single word, people sensed confidence, respect, and authenticity in you. Let me share a story. Everything. A young professional named Sarah once told me about her struggle at work. She worked hard, she was knowledgeable, and she always had great ideas. But in meetings, she felt invisible. Everything. Her words seemed to fall flat, even though she had spent hours preparing. She was frustrated because when others spoke, even with less substance, their voices seemed to carry more weight. Everything. After some reflection, she realized it wasn't just about what she said. It was how she showed up. She often slouched in her chair, avoided eye contact, and spoke with a hesitant tone. Everything. Even before she presented her ideas, her body language was already signaling uncertainty. Once she began practicing presence, sitting tall, making eye contact, everything, leaning forward with intention, the response to her contributions shifted dramatically. People leaned in when she spoke. They took her seriously. Nothing about her knowledge had changed. Everything. Only her presence. This is a powerful reminder that presence shapes perception. When you walk into a room, you are already communicating whether you want to or not. The good news is everything. Presence is not an inborn gift reserved for the charismatic few. It's a skill, one you can practice, refine, and embody until it becomes natural. And the more you own your presence, everything, the more you'll find people listening to you, respecting you, and trusting you without you needing to prove yourself with endless words. So how do you build this presence? Everything. It begins with awareness. The truth is, most people are completely unaware of the signals they are sending. If you cross your arms, avoid eye contact, fidget with your hands, everything, or shrink into your seat, you may be telling the world that you feel small or unsure, even if inside you feel confident. On the other hand, if you stand tall, breathe steadily, everything, hold eye contact and allow pauses without fear, you communicate strength, calm, and confidence, even if you are nervous inside. The body often tells a story before the mind has the chance. Everything. Think about your own experiences. Perhaps you've met someone whose handshake was weak and eyes darted around the room. Immediately, whether fair or not, your brain judged them as uncertain. Everything. Contrast that with the person who greeted you with steady eye contact, a firm but natural handshake, and a genuine smile. Before they even said much, everything. You already felt more inclined to trust them. This is how presence works. It bypasses logic and speaks directly to the emotional brain, shaping how people perceive you. Everything. One exercise I often recommend is to become a student of yourself. The next time you walk into a meeting, a social gathering, or even a casual conversation, notice your posture. Everything, your gestures, and your breathing. Ask yourself, am I taking up space confidently, or am I shrinking into myself? Do I allow silence to settle without rushing to fill it? Everything. Or do I panic and overtalk? Presence thrives in calmness. Those who are truly powerful do not need to prove it with constant noise. They radiate it with how they carry themselves. Everything. Let's take an example from history. Think of Martin Luther King Jr. He had a voice that moved millions, yes, but even before the words, his presence carried weight, everything. Watch any footage of him, and you will see a man who stood tall, who paused with intention, whose very silence commanded attention. Now think of someone like Nelson Mandela, everything, who after years in prison walked into rooms of adversaries and radiated calm strength. It wasn't only the words they spoke that influenced the world, it was the presence behind those words, everything. They embodied a quiet power that others could feel. You don't need to be a world leader to harness this. Even in daily life, your presence can transform how others respond to you, everything. Imagine going into a job interview. If you enter hurried, shoulders hunched, avoiding eye contact, the interviewer senses anxiety before you've said a word. But if you walk in, everything. Pause to breathe, stand tall, look them in the eye, and sit with relaxed composure, you've already communicated, I belong here, everything. I am confident. The rest of your words will now be heard through that lens of credibility. This is why I often say, presence is preparation. Everything. Before any conversation that matters, a meeting, a date, a negotiation, take a moment to center yourself. Breathe deeply. Ground your feet. Roll your shoulders back. Everything. Imagine the energy you want to radiate calm, confident, warm, open, because the energy you carry will enter the room before your words do. Everything. There's also something deeply magnetic about those who are fully present in the moment. We live in a distracted world where most people are half, listening, glancing at their phones, everything, or rehearsing what they'll say next. When you give someone your undivided attention, eyes steady, body still, mind engaged, they feel it. And in that moment, everything, you communicate something rarely respect. Respect without needing to say, I respect you. People will often walk away from such interactions saying, everything. There's just something about them, not realizing it was simply your presence that made them feel valued. Of course, presence is not about being stiff, robotic, everything, or trying to project something fake. Authenticity is key. Presence is not pretending to be someone you're not. It's amplifying the best parts of who you already are, everything. It's aligning your body language, your tone, and your energy with your true intentions. If you genuinely care, let it show in your eyes. If you genuinely believe in your idea, everything, let it show in your posture. Presence is about congruence, when who you are on the inside matches what you communicate on the outside. That's when people trust you, everything. A useful habit is to practice moments of presence throughout your day. When you walk into a cafe, notice how you enter. Do you look down at your phone, disconnected from the space, everything? Or do you lift your head and engage with the environment? When you greet a colleague, do you mumble a distracted hello, everything? Or do you take 2 seconds to make eye contact and say it with intention? These tiny adjustments compound. Over time, they transform the way people experience you, everything. I remember coaching a young entrepreneur who struggled to win investors' trust. His ideas were solid, his numbers were strong, but meetings left him feeling dismissed. Everything. The problem wasn't his pitch, it was his presence. He spoke too quickly, avoided silence, and leaned back in his chair as though he was seeking approval rather than owning the room. Everything. Once he began practicing presence, slowing down his speech, grounding his body, making deliberate eye contact, the difference was night and day. Investors began to lean forward, everything, ask deeper questions, and ultimately they invested. His success was not only in what he said, but in the presence that carried those words. You may be wondering, everything. Does this mean you have to constantly monitor yourself, afraid of slipping up? Not at all. Presence, once practiced, becomes natural. Think of it like learning to ride a bike. At first, everything. You're hyper-aware of balance, posture, and movement. But with repetition, it becomes second nature. The same is true here. The more you practice showing up with awareness and intention, everything, the less you'll need to think about it. It will simply be who you are. And perhaps the most empowering truth of all is this: you don't need to be the loudest, the funniest, everything, or the most charismatic person in the room to have presence. You simply need to be grounded, authentic, and attentive. People are drawn to calm strength, everything, to those who radiate confidence without arrogance, to those who make others feel seen without needing to dominate. Remember this the next time you step into a room, everything. Before you utter a single word, you are already speaking. The question is, what story is your presence telling? When most people think of communication, everything, they imagine speaking, delivering their ideas, persuading others, making their voices heard. But the real magic, the kind of magic that transforms relationships and builds trust, everything, begins with listening. Not the kind of half-hearted listening we slip into when we're already planning our reply, but a deeper everything, more intentional kind of listening. The kind that makes someone feel, maybe for the first time in a long while, that they are truly understood. Everything. Think for a moment about the last time you felt heard. Maybe it was a conversation with a close friend, a mentor, everything. Or someone who simply paused their own world for a moment and gave you their full attention. Do you remember how safe that felt? Everything. Do you remember the relief of not needing to explain yourself twice, of watching someone lean in and really absorb your words without judgment or distraction? That moment, however simple, everything was powerful. It built connection. It built trust. It made you feel valued. Everything. And that is the very heart of deep listening, turning conversations into bridges that carry people closer to you rather than walls that separate you. The truth is everything. Many of us don't listen to understand. We listen to respond. We wait for the moment when the other person stops talking so we can finally jump in with our story, our advice, everything, or our perspective. We nod, we smile, but in our minds, we're rehearsing the perfect line or plotting the next point to make. Everything. It's not that we don't care. It's that we've trained ourselves to believe communication is a game of turns, a back and forth performance. But when we do this, everything, we rob ourselves of the deeper insight, the subtle meaning, and the emotional truth beneath the words being spoken. Imagine a young manager in a fast-paced office. Her team member comes in, everything, clearly frustrated, saying, "This project feels impossible. I can't keep up with the deadlines." The manager, eager to fix things, quickly replies, "Don't worry, you'll be fine. Everything, just manage your time better." On the surface, the manager has responded, but the employee doesn't feel heard. Everything. What they really needed was not a quick fix, but a moment of understanding. A chance for someone to say, "It sounds like you're overwhelmed. Everything. Tell me more about what feels impossible." That small shift from replying to truly listening changes everything. It tells the other person, "I see you. I hear you. Everything. You matter." This is where empathy enters the picture. Empathy is not about agreeing with someone. It's not about pretending you've lived their exact experience. Everything. It's about stepping into their perspective long enough to sense what they feel and to show them that their emotions have space in the conversation. Sometimes, everything. Empathy sounds like silence, just letting them speak until the weight lifts from their chest. Sometimes it's as simple as reflecting back what they've said. Everything. It sounds like you're under a lot of pressure right now. And sometimes it's in the way you hold eye contact, in the way you lean forward. Everything. In the way you resist the urge to glance at your phone or finish their sentence. These are signals that say, without words, everything. I'm here with you. Think of the people in your life who you describe as trustworthy. Chances are they are the ones who know how to listen. They don't rush you. Everything. They don't dismiss you. They give you room to breathe, to explore your own thoughts, to even stumble through messy words without making you feel judged. And because they listen like that, everything, you feel safe opening up to them again and again. That is the power of deep listening. It doesn't just build better conversations, it builds lasting influence. Everything. One of the greatest misunderstandings about communication is believing that speaking well is the only way to earn respect. In reality, everything. Some of the most influential people in history, leaders, teachers, healers, were masters of listening. They understood that by listening carefully, they could uncover truths others missed. Everything. They could see patterns, emotions, and needs that were hidden beneath the surface. And once they had listened, their words carried more weight. Everything. Because they were responding to what truly mattered, not just to what was said on the surface. Let's look at an everyday example. Imagine a couple arguing about household chores. One says, "Everything, you never help me around the house." The other immediately replies, "That's not true. I did the dishes yesterday." A back and forth like this usually spirals. Why? Everything. Because no one is truly listening. The first person isn't really talking about dishes. They're talking about feeling unsupported, unseen, maybe even unloved. Everything. But if the partner could pause and listen beyond the words, they might say, "I hear that you're feeling like I'm not supporting you enough." That must feel frustrating. Suddenly, everything, the tone shifts, the walls begin to lower. The conversation transforms from a battle into a bridge. That is the gift of listening to understand. You uncover the real need beneath the noise. Everything. But deep listening requires discipline. In our world of endless notifications, quick answers, and constant distractions, it's not easy to give someone your full attention. Our minds wander. Everything. We think about what to say next, or worse, we check our phone mid-conversation. When we do that, we send a silent message. Everything. Something else is more important than you right now. And over time, that erodes relationships. But the opposite is also true. When you fight the temptation to drift, everything. When you look someone in the eye and stay present, you send the opposite message. Right now, you are the most important thing in the room. That message, unspoken yet deeply felt, everything, can transform not only personal relationships but also professional ones. There's a practice you can begin right now to improve this skill. The next time you're in a conversation, everything, try to pause before responding. Literally take a breath and ask yourself, am I listening to understand, or am I just waiting for my turn to speak? Everything. That small pause interrupts the automatic habit of replying and makes room for empathy. Another exercise is to reflect back what you've heard. If someone tells you, everything, I'm stressed about this deadline, resist the urge to give advice immediately. Instead, respond, everything. It sounds like this deadline is weighing heavily on you. Simple reflections like this not only show the other person you're listening, but also give them the chance to clarify their feelings. Everything. Great listeners also pay attention to what is not being said. The slight hesitation in someone's voice, the sigh they release mid-sentence, everything. The way their shoulders slump, these are all part of the conversation. And when you acknowledge them, you go beyond words. Saying something like, everything, I can see this is really tough for you, validates their unspoken emotions. And that validation is often more healing than any advice you could give. Everything. One of the most underrated benefits of deep listening is the influence it grants you. When people feel understood by you, they are more likely to respect your perspective in return. Everything. They trust you because you've proven that you're not just concerned with your own voice, you care about theirs. In leadership, this is priceless. A leader who listens builds loyalty. Everything. A leader who doesn't listen breeds resentment. In friendships, listening creates intimacy. In business, it creates opportunities. Think of the difference between two professionals. Everything. One walks into a meeting, dominates the conversation, and leaves with everyone feeling dismissed. The other walks in, asks thoughtful questions, listens carefully, everything, and speaks only after gathering the full picture. Who do you think people will turn to in the future for advice, collaboration, or leadership? The answer is obvious, everything. Influence is not always about the loudest voice in the room. Often, it belongs to the one who listens the best. At its core, listening to understand is about giving a gift, everything. It's the gift of attention in a world starved for it. It's the gift of saying, everything. You matter enough for me to pause my thoughts and focus entirely on you. That gift doesn't cost money. It doesn't require special training. It only requires presence, patience, everything, and empathy. And yet it is one of the rarest and most valuable gifts you can give. As you begin practicing this, you will notice subtle but profound shifts. Everything. People will open up to you more easily. Conflicts that once escalated will begin to soften. Everything. Relationships will deepen because the people around you will start to associate you with safety and understanding. And perhaps most importantly, you will discover that in listening to others, everything, you also begin to hear yourself more clearly. Because when you quiet the noise of constant replies, everything, you make room for real connection. And that connection is the very essence of effective communication. Everything. There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize that their voice is more than just sound. It is their bridge to the world. Think about the times you've sat in a meeting, everything, or even at the dinner table with an idea burning in your mind, but when it was your turn to speak, the words came out scattered or uncertain. You wanted to express something brilliant, everything, but somehow it fell flat. That experience isn't about lacking intelligence. It isn't about lacking knowledge. More often, everything. It's about lacking clarity and confidence in how we use our voice. And here's the truth: the difference between being overlooked and being remembered is often found not in what we know, everything, but in how we say it. Clarity is the foundation. Without it, even the most valuable message gets lost in noise. Imagine if a surgeon walked into the operating room, gave vague instructions, everything, and hesitated mid-sentence. Would anyone trust their leadership? Communication works the same way. When your words are unclear, people subconsciously question your credibility, everything, your certainty, and even your competence. On the other hand, When you speak with clarity, your message cuts through confusion like a beam of light. Everything. People don't just hear you, they trust you. But clarity alone is not enough. A crystal, clear voice without confidence can still crumble under doubt. Everything. Think about the last time you heard someone timidly apologize before they even began speaking. This might not make sense. Everything. Or, I'm not sure if this is right. The moment those words leave their mouth, the power of the message weakens. Confidence is what lifts clarity into influence. Everything. Confidence transforms words from mere information into inspiration. When you combine clarity with confidence, your communication becomes magnetic. People listen not because they have to, everything, but because they want to. So, how do we cultivate this powerful combination? It begins with purpose. Too many people speak without asking themselves a simple question. Everything. What do I want my words to achieve? If your words don't have direction, they wander. But when you know your intention, whether it's to inform, inspire, persuade, everything, or connect, your words begin to align. Every sentence serves the mission. Every pause carries meaning. Purpose is the compass that ensures your voice doesn't get lost. Everything. I once worked with a young professional who was brilliant in her field. She had insights her company desperately needed, but every time she spoke in meetings, everything, her points were drowned out by louder, more forceful voices. She came to me frustrated, convinced that people didn't respect her. But when I observed her, I noticed something telling. Everything. She would begin her sentences with hesitation, using filler words like and maybe. She would rush through her thoughts as if apologizing for taking up space. Everything. The problem wasn't her knowledge, it was her delivery. We worked together on slowing her speech, practicing pauses, and replacing self-doubt phrases with firm statements. Everything. Instead of saying, "I think this might work," she began saying, "Here's a solution I recommend." Within months, the shift was remarkable. Her team leaned in when she spoke. Everything. And opportunities began opening that had once passed her by. It wasn't magic, it was the art of speaking with clarity and confidence. Now, here's the part most people miss. Everything. Confidence isn't the absence of fear. Even the greatest speakers feel nervous. Everything. The difference is that they've trained themselves to use that energy as fuel instead of allowing it to paralyze them. Think of confidence not as a personality trait you're born with, everything, but as a skill you can practice. Every time you push yourself to speak a little more clearly, every time you practice your delivery, every time you remind yourself that your voice matters, everything, you are building the muscle of confidence. One powerful tool in this journey is mastering the pause. Many people believe that to sound confident, they must fill every second with words, everything, as if silence were the enemy. But silence is one of the greatest allies of a powerful speaker. A well-timed pause creates space for your audience to absorb your message, everything. It gives weight to your words. It communicates control. Imagine delivering a key insight and then pausing, letting the room sit in that thought for a moment, everything. The silence speaks louder than filler ever could. Pauses say, "I own this space, I am in no rush." That is confidence embodied. Clarity, too, is cultivated through discipline. Everything. It means stripping away unnecessary complexity and getting to the heart of your message. One of the simplest ways to do this is to ask yourself, everything. If I had only 30 seconds to explain this, what would I say? That exercise forces you to prioritize. It cuts away fluff and focuses your language. When you practice clarity, everything, you are not just respecting your own message, you are respecting your listener's time and attention. Let me share a story that illustrates this beautifully. Everything. A teacher once gave her students an assignment to explain the concept of gravity in one sentence. At first, the students were overwhelmed. They tried to cram in formulas and jargon, everything, until the teacher stopped them. "No," she said. "Imagine you're explaining it to a child. What's the essence?" Finally, one student raised his hand and said, "Everything. Gravity is what makes sure when you drop something, it falls instead of floating away." Everyone in the room smiled. That was clarity. The lesson. If a child could understand it, everything, so can anyone else. Clarity is not dumbing down, it is mastery. Confidence also comes from preparation. Everything. Too many people rely on spontaneity when the truth is that preparation builds certainty. Think of a musician walking on stage. Everything. The reason they appear confident is not because they are fearless. It's because they have rehearsed until the music is part of them. Speaking works the same way. Everything. When you've thought through your message, practiced it aloud, and refined your delivery, you walk into a conversation with a quiet assurance. You know what you're about to say matters, everything, and that confidence radiates. But confidence is not just about preparation. It's also about belief that your words have value. If you secretly doubt your right to speak, everything, your voice will always betray that insecurity. The truth is, every person's perspective has worth. You may not always be the loudest in the room, but your experiences, your insights, everything, your truth, they are uniquely yours. No one else can bring them to the table in the way you can. Owning that truth is the root of confidence. When you internalize that your voice matters, everything, it becomes easier to express it with strength. Now, let's talk about presence. Confidence and clarity are amplified by the way you carry yourself. Everything. People don't just listen to words, they read tone, posture, and energy. Stand tall, breathe deeply, look people in the eye. Everything. These signals tell your audience before you even open your mouth that you are worth listening to. I once heard someone say, everything. Your body whispers what your mouth cannot say. If your posture whispers doubt, your words will struggle to overcome it. But if your presence whispers assurance, your words soar. Everything. Practical steps can help bring this all together. Start by recording yourself speaking. Listen back, not to criticize, but to notice. Do you rush? Do you use filler words? Everything. Do you trail off at the end of sentences? Awareness is the first step toward growth. Then, practice slowing down. Give your words room to breathe. Replace fillers with silence. Everything. You'll be surprised at how much more authoritative you sound. And before any important conversation or presentation, ground yourself with deep breaths. Everything. Breathing calms your nervous system and steadies your voice. It tells your body and mind you are ready. And don't underestimate the power of practice in everyday life. Everything. You don't need a stage to sharpen your skills. Every conversation, every meeting, every interaction is a chance to practice clarity and confidence. Speak up in small ways. Everything. Share your opinion. Express your ideas. Each time you do, you are reinforcing the identity of someone who communicates with strength. Over time, it becomes second nature. Everything. When you master clarity and confidence, something shifts not only in how others see you, but in how you see yourself. You stop shrinking. You stop apologizing for existing. Everything. You begin to carry yourself differently, as someone whose voice deserves to be heard. And in that shift, opportunities unfold. People remember you. They trust you. Everything. They invite you into rooms you once thought were closed. Words, when spoken with clarity and confidence, become the keys that unlock doors to influence and success. Everything. There comes a moment in every relationship, whether personal or professional, when the air feels heavier than usual. A difficult topic hangs between two people. Everything. Unspoken words pushing against the silence, each side unsure of how to move forward without creating damage. These moments are not anomalies, they are inevitable. No matter how kind, everything, respectful, or careful you are, conflict is part of life. The real question is never whether conflict will happen, but how you will respond when it does. Everything. Your response in these moments becomes the defining measure of your maturity, your leadership, and your growth as a communicator. Everything. Think back to a time when you avoided a difficult conversation. Maybe you told yourself it wasn't the right time, or that things would resolve themselves if you stayed quiet. Everything. Maybe you convinced yourself that silence was kindness, that avoiding the issue would preserve the peace. But more often than not, silence doesn't preserve peace. It corrodes it. Everything. What is left unsaid usually grows heavier, creating tension, distance, or even resentment. And then there are the times when you did speak, but words spilled out in frustration. Everything. Creating wounds you didn't intend. These memories remind us why navigating difficult conversations feels daunting. We either fear the conflict escalating, everything, or we fear the connection unraveling. But avoiding or mishandling these conversations doesn't protect relationships, it weakens them. The truth is, when approached with courage and skill, everything. Difficult conversations are not barriers. They are gateways. They open the door to deeper trust, clearer understanding, and stronger respect. If you learn to handle these moments with calm, everything, respect, and confidence, you transform potential breakdowns into breakthroughs. The key is not to erase conflict, but to master your role in it. Everything. One of the first steps in navigating difficult conversations is emotional regulation. When tension rises, our natural instinct is to react. We want to defend, to justify, to prove a point. Everything. But in high-stakes conversations, the calmest voice is usually the strongest. People do not remember every word you said, but they remember how you made them feel. Everything. If you can remain steady while emotions flare, you create space for resolution rather than escalation. This is not easy. It requires training yourself to pause, breathe, everything, and ground yourself before responding. Let me share a simple example. Imagine you're in the workplace and a colleague criticizes your performance in front of others. Everything. The natural impulse is to snap back, to prove them wrong, to protect your dignity on the spot. But what if, instead, you took a breath, met their eyes, and calmly said, "Everything. I'd like to talk with you about that privately." You reclaim power by refusing to be dragged into a heated exchange. Later, when you're one-on-one, everything, you can explain your perspective with clarity rather than anger. That single act of composure changes the outcome completely. You move from conflict to constructive dialogue. Everything. But emotional control alone isn't enough. You need clarity of intent. Before you step into a difficult conversation, ask yourself, what is the goal here? Am I seeking understanding, everything, or am I seeking victory? Am I trying to build connection, or am I trying to score points? Too often, conversations derail because we approach them with the wrong intention, everything. If your focus is simply to prove yourself right, you will likely lose the relationship in the process. But if your focus is to create understanding, even if you disagree, everything, you preserve the relationship while still honoring your perspective. Consider a personal example. A parent and teenager often clash over independence, everything. The parent may be concerned about safety, while the teenager seeks freedom. If both sides enter the conversation with the intent to win, it becomes a shouting match, everything. But if the parent shifts the intent to understanding, saying, "Help me see what independence means to you, and I'll explain why I'm worried," the entire tone shifts, everything. Both voices find room to be heard, and even if full agreement isn't reached, mutual respect grows. Another vital skill in these conversations is listening, everything. Most of us think we're listening, but in reality, we're just waiting for our turn to talk. Real listening requires humility. It means holding back the instinct to interrupt, everything, resisting the urge to mentally prepare your next argument, and instead giving your full attention to the other person. Ask clarifying questions. Reflect back what you hear. Phrases like, "Everything. So what I hear you saying is," or, "It sounds like you're feeling," not only show attentiveness but also diffuse defensiveness. When people feel heard, everything, their need to fight diminishes. Now, listening doesn't mean agreeing. You can understand someone's perspective deeply and still hold firm in your own, everything. But the act of listening makes the other person more open to hearing you in return. Think of it like opening a door. By listening first, you open the door for mutual exchange. Everything. Slam it shut with defensiveness, and no message gets through. Sometimes, though, the challenge isn't just listening. It's speaking truth without harm. Everything. There are moments when you must deliver feedback, set boundaries, or express dissatisfaction. Many people avoid this because they fear it will damage the relationship. Everything. But avoiding truth is rarely kindness. The real art is in how you deliver it. Choose your words carefully, not to soften the truth, but to frame it respectfully. Everything. Use I statements rather than you accusations. Instead of saying, "You never listen to me," you might say, "Everything. I feel unheard when I try to share my thoughts." That subtle shift lowers defensiveness and keeps the focus on your experience rather than their flaws. Let me give you another story. Everything. A manager once had to confront a team member who consistently missed deadlines. The manager could have lashed out in frustration, saying, "You're always late, everything, and you're holding everyone back." Instead, they chose a different approach. They said, "I've noticed several deadlines have been missed, and it's affecting the team's progress. Everything. Can you help me understand what's going on?" That one sentence turned a potential confrontation into collaboration. Everything. The team member admitted to struggling with workload and asked for guidance. The problem didn't vanish, but the conversation moved towards solutions rather than blame. Everything. There's also courage required in holding the line. Not every difficult conversation ends with harmony. Sometimes, the other person refuses to see your perspective, everything, or the resolution you hope for doesn't come. In those moments, courage means standing firm with dignity, without falling into hostility, everything. It means knowing you can express yourself respectfully and let the outcome unfold without tying your worth to the other person's reaction. When you can do this, everything, you free yourself from fear. You learn that your role is not to control how others respond, but to control how you show up. Think of it like sailing. You cannot control the wind, everything, but you can control how you set your sails. A difficult conversation may bring storms, But if you steer with steadiness, you'll make it through without capsizing. Everything. And every time you navigate one of these storms with strength, you build more confidence for the next. Practical preparation can also help. Before walking into a challenging conversation, everything. Take a moment to script your key points. Not word for word, but a clear sense of what you need to express and what outcome you hope for. Anticipate possible reactions. Everything. Decide in advance how you will keep your emotions grounded if the conversation becomes heated. Preparation isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Everything. It ensures you don't lose your way in the swirl of emotion. Finally, remember that difficult conversations are not just about solving problems. They are about building stronger. Everything. More authentic connections. Every time you step into one with courage, you prove to yourself and to others that the relationship matters enough to face discomfort. Everything. And in a world where so many people run from hard truths, that courage stands out. People trust those who can be honest without being cruel, firm without being harsh. Everything. And compassionate without being weak. So the next time you feel that familiar knot in your stomach, that quiet dread of a conversation you don't want to have, remind yourself of this truth. Everything. Avoidance feeds fear, but action builds courage. By stepping in calmly, listening deeply, and speaking truth with respect, you not only navigate the moment, you grow from it. And growth, everything, after all, is the ultimate reward of communication. There comes a moment in every person's journey when they realize that communication is not just something they do, everything, but something they are. It is not confined to presentations or interviews, or conversations with friends and loved ones. It extends into every corner of life, everything. The way you greet the person at the coffee shop, the way you listen to your colleague who's struggling with a project, the way you express gratitude to your family at the end of a long day, everything. Communication is not an event, it is a lifestyle. And the quality of your life will always reflect the quality of your communication. Think for a moment about someone you admire deeply. Everything. Maybe it's a mentor, a leader, or even a public figure. When you strip away the external success, the titles, the accolades, everything, what you're often left with is a person who knows how to connect. They carry themselves with clarity. They make others feel valued. They listen in a way that makes you feel understood. Everything. And when they speak, their words move people to act. That's not accidental. That's the product of years of practicing communication until it becomes second nature. Everything. Many people treat communication like a tool they only pull out when they need it. They prepare for the big speech, the important meeting, the tough conversation with a loved one. Everything. But the truth is, you don't rise to the level of the occasion. You fall back on the habits you've built daily. Everything. Just like an athlete doesn't become a champion on the day of the competition, a communicator doesn't suddenly transform in the spotlight. Success in those moments is built on the quiet, everything consistent practice of everyday communication. Everything. I once spoke with a successful entrepreneur who told me the greatest turning point in his career wasn't when he found the right business idea or even when he secured funding. Everything. It was when he realized he needed to become intentional about his communication. He started small, making eye contact with his employees, asking them about their day and truly listening. Everything. Crafting emails that weren't just directives but carried encouragement. Over time, people felt more connected to him, more loyal, more motivated. His business grew. Everything. Not just because he had a good product, but because he built a culture where communication was the lifeline. He laughed as he admitted, "I thought I needed to master strategy, everything. But what I really needed to master was people. And that started with how I communicated every single day." That's the heart of communication as a lifestyle. It's about making small, everything, intentional choices in every interaction, because those choices compound. Think of communication like compound interest. Every investment you make, every moment of listening fully, everything, every word of encouragement, every expression of gratitude adds up, and over time it creates trust, influence, and opportunities you could never manufacture overnight. Everything. But here's the challenge. Most of us get busy. We rush through our days, caught up in deadlines, distracted by screens, overwhelmed by noise. And in that rush, everything. Communication becomes transactional. We talk, but we don't connect. We hear, but we don't listen. We speak, but our words lack presence. Everything. And then we wonder why our relationships feel shallow or why opportunities slip by. What if instead you made a decision to treat communication as a practice? Everything. The way a musician practices their instrument or an athlete trains their body. Practicing communication doesn't have to be complicated. It begins with awareness, everything. Notice how you speak to people when you're stressed versus when you're calm. Pay attention to whether you're listening to respond or listening to understand, everything. Reflect on the words you choose. Are they building bridges or are they burning them? These small moments of awareness are like repetitions in a workout, everything. They strengthen your ability to be present, clear, and impactful. Imagine walking through your daily life as if every interaction were an opportunity to practice mastery, everything. You greet the cashier with genuine warmth. You pause to listen when your child tells you about their day, resisting the urge to check your phone, everything. You choose words that inspire cooperation rather than defensiveness when talking to your team at work. These may seem like ordinary moments, everything, but they are the very moments that shape who you become as a communicator. And when the big moments come, when you're standing in front of a crowd, everything, when you're leading a critical conversation, when you're negotiating a life-changing opportunity, you'll discover that you don't need to put on a performance, everything. You'll simply be the person you've been practicing to be all along. Think about some of the world's greatest communicators, leaders who shaped history, innovators who inspired change, everything, mentors who transformed lives. What makes them extraordinary is not just their words, but the life behind their words. Their communication was an extension of who they were, everything. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't inspire millions because he practiced one great speech. His words had power because they reflected years of conviction, everything. Daily alignment between belief and action. Oprah Winfrey didn't connect with audiences worldwide because she studied one technique. She lived her communication day after day, everything, with empathy and presence. Their mastery was built on a lifestyle, not a moment. Now, let's bring it closer to home. Maybe you're not leading a nation or hosting a global television show, everything. But you are leading a life, and your communication is shaping it right now. The way you speak to yourself matters just as much as the way you speak to others, everything. The internal dialogue you carry, the words you repeat in your own mind, sets the tone for how you show up in the world. If your self-talk is filled with doubt, criticism, and negativity, everything, it will leak into your conversations with others. But if you cultivate a habit of communicating with yourself with kindness, clarity, and encouragement, you'll carry that energy outward. Everything, every relationship you have is built on a foundation of communication. Strong relationships don't happen by accident. They are nurtured through intentional words, consistent listening, everything, and showing up with authenticity. In your career, opportunities often come not just from what you know, but from who trusts you, and trust is always built through communication. Everything, even your personal fulfillment, the way you feel about your life, is tied to how well you connect with yourself, with others, and with the world around you. So, everything. How do you make communication a lifestyle? Start with small rituals. Set the intention each morning to be fully present in at least one meaningful conversation that day. Everything. Make it a practice to put away distractions when someone is speaking to you. End your day by expressing gratitude, everything. Whether it's sending a quick message to a friend or simply telling someone close to you how much you appreciate them. These little rituals might feel small, everything, but they are the bricks that build the structure of a communicative life. Another powerful practice is reflection. At the end of your day, take a moment to ask yourself, everything, how did I show up in my conversations today? Did I listen fully? Did I speak with clarity? Did I make others feel valued? Reflection transforms experiences into growth, everything. It turns everyday interactions into lessons that sharpen your skill and deepen your connection. There's also a discipline to communication. Sometimes you won't feel like listening, everything. Sometimes you'll want to snap, to argue, to retreat. In those moments, choosing to stay calm, to choose better words, to lean in rather than pull away. That's where mastery is built, everything. Just like discipline in health means choosing the salad when you want the burger, discipline in communication means choosing connection over impulse. And every time you do, everything, you strengthen the muscle. Think of your life 5 years from now. Imagine the relationships you want, the career you aspire to, the kind of presence you want to carry into every room, everything. Now ask yourself, what kind of communicator would that future version of you be? Confident, compassionate, clear. That future self doesn't appear overnight. It is built in the present, everything, through the choices you make today. Every interaction is shaping that version of you. There is immense power in deciding that communication is not something you occasionally practice, everything, but a way of living. It is choosing to bring presence, clarity, empathy, and purpose into every exchange. And when you do everything, you don't just improve your conversations, you transform your life.